This is an emergency movie. 150 passengers are locked in an airliner along with deadly biological weapons.
Audio Jungle.
The people in the terminal are fussing, afraid of being late for the flight. A young man stands out among the people. He asks the registrar which plane has the most passengers. Having not received the information he was looking for, the guy goes to the toilet, where he makes an incision in the armpit and pushes a small metal container into the wound. Washing his hands of blood, he notices that he is being watched from the booth. There is a little girl who chose the men's toilet because of the long queue for the women's. The man approaches her when the girl's father, the main character named Jae-hyuk, appears. They go to the waiting room, but the man pursues them, asking personal questions. Noticing by the tag on the luggage that they are flying to Hawaii, the stranger buys a ticket there, after which he calmly passes the inspection. There is a hitch with the inhaler, which is quickly resolved and it is skipped. When all the passengers take their seats, the plane taxis for takeoff and rushes into the endless sky. At this time, police captain In Ho finds out that his wife has gone on vacation to Hawaii. The captain himself does not let go of his favorite job. At the station, he is carefully informed about a video with a certain civilian type of insidious appearance, who promises to arrange a terrorist attack on the plane today. Taking a partner, the captain goes to the address of the alleged suspect. After interrogating the kids, the policeman breaks into the terrorist's apartment, where he finds a terrifying sight, an empty bathtub. Already leaving, the inspector notices a half-decomposed corpse, carefully wrapped in cellophane. The investigative team is searching the apartment. The coroner determines that the deceased died of some kind of poisoning. Also, the police find a lot of videotapes depicting experiments on rats. The scientist checks some kind of virus on them, noting the time of death from the moment of infection. It turns out that his name is Jin Suk. The cops go to the airport to find out if he got on the plane. The captain rejoices when it turns out that the suspect is flying to Honolulu, but immediately becomes sad when he remembers that this is the capital of Hawaii. In the liner, a mysterious passenger enters the toilet and extracts a container from the wound. After charging them with an inhaler, the man sprays the room. At the exit, he bumps into a little girl who was outpaced by a business-class passenger with a toilet. The stranger says that the girl was lucky and adds something else, but quietly. A passenger from business class notices suspicious dust in the toilet, which is reported to the stewardess on the way out. Jae-hyuk sees a neighbor's video with a threat of a terrorist attack and recognizes the person on the screen as a suspicious stranger who followed them on the flight. Together with his daughter, he goes to the flight attendants to tell them that Jin Suk, a potential terrorist, is flying with them in the same cabin, hiding something under his arm, and later telling the girl that all the people on board will die. However, all the staff can do is look after him, and also take lunch to the pilot so that they have enough strength to steer to the final one. In business class, a passenger from the toilet becomes ill. While he is shamelessly vomiting in the aisle, the rest are filming the spectacle on smartphones. Crowded with everyone, Jae-hyuk sees a satisfied grin on Jin Suk's face, and accuses him of poisoning. A scuffle ensues between them. At this time, the pilots get an orientation on the gin juice. As befits an inventive and resourceful co-pilot, a pilot named Nen-soo goes to check on the passengers. He finds the brawl in full swing. The hero shows everyone a fresh wound under the armpit of a potential terrorist. The pilot politely asks Jin Suk to show the documents in order to check the orientation. Realizing that he has been found out, the would-be terrorist breaks away along the chairs and aisle, under the close attention of a dozen mobile cameras. While a team of volunteers is twisting an overly active passenger, he sprays the contents of the inhaler around, releasing it from his hands upon completion. The mad scientist is tied up by reporting the situation to Earth. It immediately turns out that Jae-hyuk is familiar with Nen-soo, but there is a strained relationship between them. They talk while the pilot checks the toilet for evidence. An operational headquarters headed by the Minister of Transport and Infrastructure is gathering on Earth. Nen-soo reports on the substance sprayed in the cabin. The police link it to a dangerous virus that the terrorist was working on at the pharmaceutical company Brigham, and understand that the virus has already spread through the plane. Representatives of the company do not want to cooperate with the police, since the suspect has quit 4 years ago, and the company is foreign. Aggravating the situation is the fact that the hero's overly sociable neighbor posted a video from the plane online. Journalists immediately seized on the news about the act of bioterrorism. Jin Suk himself does not make any demands and generally looks like a fanatical madman. Immediately after the interrogation, he spits blood, being infected. The plane suddenly loses altitude abruptly. Things take off into the air, unbuckled people are hitting the ceiling, and the ship rotates around its axis, performing a barrel, for which it is not really intended. Having enjoyed the sudden attraction, when the airliner fell into a tailspin, especially active citizens, including Jae-hyuk, rush into the control room. The dead captain put all his weight on the steering wheel, condemning the others to potential death. Jae-hyuk and his assistant managed to remove the body and level the plane. By this time, the terrorist had already died, as reported to the ground by co-pilot Nensu, who took command. Meanwhile, a news report about an airliner stricken with a dangerous disease is being broadcast. The report is watched by passengers on board. The news of a deadly virus does not add to their optimism. They are divided into different salons. In one part, those who have no symptoms, in the other, those who have manifested the first, in the form of a rash on the hand. The hero has to go to the sick, because his daughter has dermatitis, and it is impossible to prove the opposite. People who know how to provide first aid, give patients injections of antipyretic. The plane is approaching the Hawaiian Islands, but Honolulu Airport prohibits boarding with infected people. The minister in no way manages to settle the issue diplomatically, and then Sue is forced to turn around and go on the opposite course. On the ground, relatives of passengers are urgently taken to the airport in Seoul. Captain In-ho tries to get into the territory of the laboratory with a brick, but the guards do not let him in. Later, he receives an anonymous call from one of the company's employees. The informant informs that Ji-sok has his own person in the laboratory. The police go after him, but the guy escapes on a moped. During a short chase through the narrow Korean streets, the participants of the drama get into an accident. The bloody captain catches up with the stopped fugitive. It turns out that the suspect was not a friend of the terrorist, he just worked with him. The former fugitive says that the virus was brought illegally from the Middle East, and Jin-sok had previously used it on people. 2 died, and 1 survived. After this incident, he was fired. The police go to visit the survivor. The woman helps to determine the type of virus, after which Brick has no choice but to admit the existence of a vaccine against it. The operational headquarters sends military personnel to the pharmaceutical company's office, but even so the guards do not want to let them into the territory. The minister personally has to negotiate with foreign managers, promising to mitigate the subsequent claim if they cooperate now. The plane with the infected flies faster than the prescribed speed, as the pilot feels unwell and is afraid of not having time to land the ship. It turns out that there is another experienced pilot on board, Jae-hyuk. Once, as a civil aviation pilot, he made an emergency landing at his own risk, and saved almost all people, except for 2 flight attendants in the tail, who were overwhelmed with luggage. Among them was Nensu's wife. Since then, the hero has been experiencing extreme stress in the air, even traveling as a passenger. When the situation heats up between the infected, the hero goes to the cabin to help a former colleague. Information is received from Earth that a cure for the disease has been found. However, Nensu gets worse. He decides to land at a Japanese airport. But the Japanese authorities are categorically against accepting a biological threat. They themselves sell it wholesale under the brand Resident Evil. Dispatchers tell the liner to plan for itself further, like plywood over Paris, but the pilot insistently leads the ship to land, and even releases the landing gear. The situation escalates when Japanese Air Force fighters take to the air. They tell the Koreans to turn around, but Nensu refuses. Even a cursory fire from machine guns along the side does not shake his resolve. But when entering the runway, a fighter flies towards us, preparing for the glorious tradition of Japanese pilots, ramming. Realizing that it is useless to fart against the long-standing culture of his brothers in the region, Nensu takes the plane up so as not to ruin the passengers. Then he falls down without strength and Jae-hyuk has to take over the controls, simultaneously pulling the unconscious body off the steering wheel. The airliner is on its way to Korea. On TV, the Japanese government explains the situation. They cannot risk the lives of their citizens for the sake of 150 gaijins. In addition, the virus in their bodies may be a mutation against which a vaccine is useless. The latest information inspires nervous tremors in the hearts of those involved. The passengers of the plane and people on the ground are afraid that the vaccine will not work. Similar doubts strike the leadership of the country. The authorities decide to ban the landing of the infected board for the sake of the safety of the others. Captain In-ho, unable to stand the uncertainty, goes to the laboratory to have the virus injected into him and the effect of the vaccine tested on him. The first demonstrators appear near the Seoul airport, worried that the returning plane could start an epidemic akin to the one described by Stephen King in Confrontation. When receiving news from below, those who are in the air think, really, are they not threatening the lives of their relatives and friends? After a short meeting, the passengers decide not to land, but to take the aircraft away into the sea. Jae-hyuk gets in touch with the control room to report an attempt to avoid a potential disaster. He warns that the people on board will send a message to their relatives while the plane is turning around, and ends the monologue. The liner comes in for the last lap. Passengers send video messages to relatives, saying goodbye to them. They are standing below, with their heads up to the sky, and watching the plane disappear into the night clouds. Meanwhile, the captain is recovering from the vaccine. The medicine works. The minister orders to contact the pilot in order to land the plane, but the hero turned off the radio. Then the operatives go to the relatives so that they can get through to the people upstairs and tell them about the medicine. People are starting to dial numbers in a hurry. In the dark interior with the lights off, the smartphone screens gradually light up. Reading the messages, people rejoice. The stewardess informs Jae-hyuk about this, and he gets in touch with the control room. After receiving confirmation, the pilot once again turns the plane around. It turns out that there is not enough fuel, and the speed is too high to sit on a lane of insufficient length. The hero decides to make it to the military airfield. Along the way, he talks to the disconnected Hyun-soo, confessing that, despite the death of his wife, he made the right decision. Hyun-soo comes to his senses and says that he would have done the same, and that there is no fault of Jae-hyuk. Flying up to the runway, the pilot turns off the electricity and cuts off the engines. He plans to the goal, swerving at the last moment to turn off the speed. The liner comes in for another lap, keeping in the wind. Releasing the landing gear, Jae-hyuk comes in to land, but at the last moment decides to make another lap of honor, so low that the wheels almost touch the roofs of high-rise buildings. To make it through, he turns on the engines, burning the remaining fuel and enters the lane on the third attempt. It is not possible to straighten the car right away, it takes some time to race. But soon the landing gear engages with concrete, Jae-hyuk releases the flaps and turns on the reverse. But the speed is still too high. People at the end of the runway run away in horror from the rushing steel fool. In the salon, people are sitting with their hands on the chairs, and Jae-hyuk's face is distorted by a tense grimace and, the screen darkens. The action is transferred to the Commission for the analysis of this situation. The Minister of Infrastructure and Transport is resigning from his post to no longer accept such responsibility. She cannot understand what prompted the terrorist to think about killing 150 people. Members of the Commission note the sacrifice of Captain In-ho, who, due to the large amount of the virus, did not fully restore the functionality of the body. In the next scene, Jae-hyuk is walking down the Spring Street with his daughter. They approach the passengers of the plane celebrating a happy rescue. Leaving his daughter with the women, the hero goes on, simultaneously greeting the recovered Nin-soo. His target is the almost paralyzed Captain In-ho, who, nevertheless, according to his partner, is gradually recovering. The film ends with a view of the minister sitting on the pier. She recalls the last moments of landing. The plane that left the runway is standing in a field, passengers are rejoicing, and around the rescue vehicles sparkle with bright